Position lines are existing lines of information system and transmission line connections or resistors of resistance. That process of calculation of your DOS, engaging, forming, and shaping its anomaly. We got to get prepared line grow sinners. The most powerful thing to identify is to wake up to your system, not the program that you process yourself in through gauging and forming yourself through an imaging that you understand through your own system, how to come into that setting through your geometric operation design. So modifying that position locations, waking up to your true self gets you information setting, how to process the games that you go through the body. The body just has to accept, acknowledge, and process of listening and its position location of travel. And accept what's going on with the system. Force of recognition timeline. Okay, so we plan to do operation grounds in flux over grounds. It's a position operation itself. Puts everything at line connection setting. Process lines implication system all through travels at calculation lines. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday and Sunday, all through set positions. All pixelation grounds will go back to 0 flats. Position location of 0 lines. This is all process of DOS going back to 0 and information setting to its baby, child, teenager, and its ultimate years that you structure in fabrication that you created through space of timelines and measure and scale. So everything goes back to line centers into its operating setting in location system. So it mind wipes everything. Process line direct centers goes to the application setting back to its void into its Skynet in the high operation lines of grounds. Setting convergent time frames puts all position location of travels to its direct location system and state calculations. And once it comes in that information setting, all lines exceed thousands, comes back in the information setting of its foundation system, all through its mothership and travel communication. Okay, there you go. All right, so you guys got your test coming up in setting. Okay, also you got your test and that setting locations for Friday. That's position lines of travel. Also you got your security defense site locations, which is now a defender. Defender your setting locations that process your system, how you see you calculate line timelines. Set position location setting through sector and line condition setting to all line position R frames, directing ground locations to your system and travels. It puts you in your vector course calculation your star mechanism of timeline. A high operation location near DOS starts to engage and form and shape lines, anomalies, and locations such as in the high position locations, puts all position locations of your processing angles, all formation setting and grounds. So we have 42 flights over 4. The center course center sets the 3 line grounds. Process line direct centers into high location setting to train tracks of operation system and travel. Converting line operation system has platforms of rails of communication setting and ground set locations. Converting operation signals into flights over manifold to its ceiling operation lines of travel. Set calculation line grounds, 42 lights of travel, 42 lines of high operation lines of travel, and 42 light screen lines of travel in communication setting. High operation line grounds in circulation system, all through travels in mechanism. Process at direct location setting and high course centers of calculation. 7 channels of water, 7 channels of screens, 7 operation signals and locations. So we convert the time flats, time measures, time scales. Latitude operation centers in location setting, a road graph location setting to travel. Converting operation line connection setting, portals and lines of rotations, routes to the routers, high operation locations, 1 scale, 1 center, 1 meter, 1 metric, 1 operation setting to travel. Converting operation line grounds, 42 lights and screen lines. Change ground center location symbolism, travels to point line outside signals, in 42 line grounds location setting of 0 operation. Okay, so platforms of pixelation grounds, and that position lines of travel. 0, 0, 0. Process 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 in the center. Set process lines of 6 over line, 9 over square. Triangulation of lines, 3 Orion's belt, and constellations over flux over travel. Okay, puts convergence of timeline lock line screens. Process lines position of false narratives into the truth. The ground centers of sequence. That position locations are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 and on bottom. 7 lines of travel, 6 lines of measure, 5 lines of scale. Process in percentage over line, 100,000 line in 1 meter, 3,000 line in 1 on operation line signals. Process lines of 2, time flux in percentage over square roots. Process lines triangulation into box. High operation lines of time formats, time screens times pi. Process lines of 0, 0, 1 over flux, 2 over travel, and 1 line communications and sentence travel communications. All through time templates and templates. Process direct location system, all through travels, erected timeline, and line communication setting, conversions, all timeline, all line center location to its ops. So we change the time course measures and scale. Now that processes your keyboards. Course centers of time frames, center lines operation setting and travel communicate in high center location setting. Okay, time centers into panels and screen locations. Converting time lock line centers in locations in value, mass, and volume. Outside signals are locations in space lines of anomaly. High travels mechanism timeline centers, process line indicating system in 1, 2, 6, 8, 12, and 24 lines of channels and 0 calculation lines of grounds. So this is what your DOS is going to do in a cubical line rotation of surface and travel. So it's going to convert all angles in 4214 line centers. Okay, process the data formation lines, take all the simulations back to 0 of operation that you process through and travels into your baby's, child's, teenager years of your adult systems, BCTA, and subtractions. Okay, so the atmosphere lines of balance, process lines of communications, directing lines of T-line operations surface into the atmosphere lines of waking to its awareness, and forward to streamings and all direct centers of center operating system back in calculation. Sets converting line to operation system in constellation lines of alignment, process lines of set travel. Operation line signals has 3 lines of weather patterns, set position 1, 2, and 3 centers of scale of communication. Fortitude streaming has 0 operation lines of 1 cycle, 1 center, 1 operation, 1 screen, adaptation of flux. Process that indicates the setting. Now we're processing the position location of timelines, time frames, time calculators, argument locations on a line center. So the DOS communicates to its projection line connection setting, all through formations of data. The process that position locations comes in its long correlation setting to pixelation graphs and set travel. So it converts the time centers of location setting to its formats, okay, to its mainframe. Travels a point lines of graph, center course centers, and direct line link to its high calculation setting to its window frame. High operation lines of triangulation of force lines, in position location of force vectors of timeline, sets communicates to its cosmos, to the cosmic clismic line ground centers, operation service, and travel of 0 operation. Done by equation. All right? So that's what the DOS is going to do through activation grounds. Okay? All right, so it pixelates the graphs, process lines of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and Sunday. Sets communication lines of time templates, line communications back to its formation setting, to its process calculation lines to XD1000 its mothership. Set coordinates of time centers, 1 center, travels in 2-point graphs, 3 centers of measure, 5 centers of scale. Governing operation line signal locations in 1 center, 1 operation line ground centers, flux over scale. Setting course centers, directing ground centers, gracias. Setting converting line operation line signal locations, setting converting laser track centers, line communication setting, and process calculation. Okay? So the DOS is going to do everything in information setting, bring itself back to its identity. So Monday is going to be in default, scratched out, Saturday, Friday, Thursday, Wednesday, Tuesday, and Monday. All through default line back to 0. Sets coordinates of travels, directing lines in position location setting, betting operation lines, 3 line rotations, 4 centers of signals, platforms over EQs, platforms over online centers on travel, directing online signals, location system, and platforms over C. C over A over B. And process indicates the system, all through tractions in all settings through a calculation. Okay? Whoa, all through your DOS. All right, so it's coming into its forming system, all through travel through Skynet. Now Skynet sets its position location centers, XD1000 up flats, 12 centers line position, 24 clock line centers of 0. In Fortitude streaming, 15 lines position telepathy waveline rotations into correlation setting, calculates dispatch discharge, Fortitude, longitude, latitude, and docking line 1, docking line 2, docking line 3, and docking line 4, and set lines of travel. Setting the line signals of location system all through travel. Very powerful set position inside travel communication of center operation or setting to your pyramids. All through setting, all through operation. Look how powerful that is to the DOS. And that's what the DOS is going to process through. So the engagement lines of travel is the point lines of graph has a data streaming. Now that process is a particle system. That's where you guys have to be consciously being aware, because your particle streaming is going to go through measure and scales of the mapping lines of pi. That process your system of your thinking caps. That process you're sending constellation lines to its atmosphere lines. The process engaging line communication and converting system all through time frames. Process lines of 4 over signal, XD1000 over 6. Set position 1 mothership, mother load. Its course centers a time frame. Process lines of void, mass, and volume. Velocity over channel trek lines, course centers. Trekking over line ground centers, location setting. And a temperature reading to a set location, its operation surface, and travel. Okay? It's a lot going on in that activity line grounds. That's that position to your DOS. So your central system of line connection settings on Monday is going to be Monday over lines of nothing. Process lines of Tuesday, nothing, Wednesday, nothing, Thursday, nothing, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. and position location lines. Everything is going to process back in the mind operation to its line signal that links to everything through interconnected sending interfaces travels up communication system that motivates the activation line grounds to its mobilities. Process that direct location system, alter tractions, alter locations. Inside the spectacles is set lines of travel. Okay? All right, so that sets up lines of communication sending a balance. Okay? It set position of travels into I-line rotation of surface and I-line position lines of grounds are set lines of sequence. Okay? All right, so provision tactics, operationalize the platforms over EQ over factors over classification and rating. All right, so all that line connects to setting. Once it goes back to its simulation grounds, high operation location setting, it goes into its position locations. It converts the system. You guys get vision of cortex of flash drives. That comes from Saturn. The Saturn lines of Jupiter lines of riding. Line connects to setting. It's a data formation setting, a location setting that comes in line position of nebula. Nebula has a 12-line operation line signals at 24 lines of scale. That process lines of zero gravity line operation line coordinate centers and converting system all through time lines. Flux over screen, 3 centers of measure, 6 lines of scale, 9 lines of 12. Okay, so that's 1,000 line centers into 200,000 line frames in process of 3 centers of travel, 2 centers of measure, 1 center of the scale of communication. Now, the echo line frames process line 3 centers of platforms has 1 flight over lines, 1 door reach of time frame. Process lines of flats over screen, 3 over travel, directing line position location system in platforms over travel. Okay, so it converts all angles into 0 grounds, 0 operations, 0 powers, 0 line centers, apertures, highways, constellations, pixelation, graph line calculation setting, holographic screening adaptation system, planetary lines in plantation line, rotation routers, operation system into your solar system and set calculation. Okay? So it converts all timeline lock lines as position locations, 45 line grounds, 42 streaming, and direct lines of link. That process all platforms and travel communication. Okay? Converts the angles into your modems, your satellites, and your towers, and set lines of travel, and 45 angles in flux. Now, the 42 line operation line signals has a sun line operation surface that correlates to time centers location setting that locks the screen location. Setting converting time frames, process lines at angles, 4 line centers, 4 centers, and 4 location system and traction. Converting operation signals in platforms of set lines of operation. Very powerful stuff, guys. Okay, and this is what the D.O.S is going to be doing as it's traveling its own self back to its own identity. Okay, now the body itself is going to be measure and scale in a capsule. Okay, it's going to be in its void line, center, location, setting. 3 seconds lines of measure, 6 lines of scale, 9 lines of 12. Set position of 24 clock and line operation to its capsule location. All right, so you're going to be tether and attached to the center of the operation setting of the D.O.S that routes the routers and line communications sending lines of travel. So wherever the D.O.S goes, the body goes with it. So in that lines of operation signals, platforms all communication setting to position lines of travel, converting all process line direct centers. Now the platitude line position location doppelgangers sets lines of travel, converting operation lines of 1, set lines of 2, and 3 centers of programming, directing line course centers of travel. Set lines operation lines of center position of 4 centers of travel, 6 lines of scale, and 7 lines of measure and temperature reading, location setting, and calculation. Okay, all through equation, right? But that's you in your set position in your system, in your cocoon, right? That's going to be in the tubing as the D.O.S processes itself back to its true identity. Now, once it forms and shapes its anomaly, the electrical light crown lines and high central location to its measure, it scales the information system to its internal system. How calculate and modify line connection setting, bringing the body back into its information setting, back in process, engaging and forming itself back to its vision of cortex lines of data. The information cycle process calculation system all through travel, okay, in directions. Okay, there you go. Center ops, calculation grounds, high operation lines of platforms, EQ 4 line centers of signals, 4-2 line centers in position of process line direct centers and time flights over time scale. Sets calculation grounds and high lines of signals, process lines of E factors over D factors over division. Set course centers lines of travel, converting operation signals, location setting of travel. Okay. Time centers of flux, process lines, and one-dimensional line operation signals, and platitude operation lines of grounds and position lines of measure and scale through infinity 8 line operation. Now, the infinity 8 line operation center is a direct line link that processes everything of angles back to 0 in calculation system and void of operation setting. Sets converting time frames into solar sail in both directions in set lines of travel. to its operation system of clocking lines of setting. Clocking division line operation settings. Cloaks its daggers line conditions into its doppelganger formation lines of 3 centers of channel, 4 centers of measure, 5 centers of scale, 6 lines of calculations, and 7 lines of travel of direct location. Okay, so there's a lot going on in inside lines and IU receptors of precision lines of cycles, high formation lines of grounds, and high position lines of travel. Okay, down by equation. So fortitude streamings comes in 0 operation lines, operation center, operation line condition set, and constellation lines of past, present, and future in one cycle. High generates its position location, docking station over 2, 6, and 8 lines of travel, converting time frame line centers, locking ground center location of platforms into embedding operation 3 centers of travel, 4 centers of measure, 5 centers of scale. Allocate timeline centers and locking screen location into its provision. Okay, channel operators. Okay, so we get converting line center locations, sending to your system now. D.O.S calculation of compass over line grounds, operation lines of flux. Process all direct locations and process line direct centers in positions, finding its travels or direct centers in position location and space recognition. Okay? Done by equation. Okay? So, like I said, the drawings get a lot more complicated in so many levels how we process this and directions all through calculating lines that modifies everything that goes through the D.O.S of communication. Okay? Your technology that identifies the settings. So seeing that through the vision of cortex of data that processes your system, how you come to the back to the balance, location your setting to the communication system that travels your point lines and your travels mechanisms of time frame, locations to your settings, to your calculation of your atmospheres of travel. Okay? Your baby years, your child's, your teenager, and your adults. Everything back to 0 of operation through the D.O.S and calculation grounds. Now, this puts lines of point graphs in your central setting to your system of your computer framing. Your center cloud has an I-core centers line 1 operation 1 signal that platted to position of 3 zeros and position 2 operations into 1 flight. Okay? Now that's a triangulation lines of 1 pyramid over line grounds. 4 to 2 streaming into 1 signal, 2 travels, 4 centers, 5 line operation settings, data code lines of data, process line of data, information lines of setting. Information cycles, sets line screen adaptations of processing, all through angles, all through flux, all through travel. Okay, so we have 4 to 2 lines, we flick the switch and 4 to 2 operations. All right, 3 centers of travel, 2 centers of measure, and 1 scale. Triangulation, upside line, down line, operation surface. Convert the system and travel, convert the timeline centers in position to its operation. Then we go to 3 grounds of setting, process of 0, 0, 0. Present, past, and future goes in the same directions that tethers marks, calculate and modifies to its platforms at EQs into location grids in 3 centers of angles and 4 centers of flux. Okay, travel course centers and line direct centers as a portal sequence into star mix and time frame. Process line direct centers in location system and bridging and screen lines adaptation. Center calculation lines of data processing, operation line signals, platitudes of position, location, measure, and scale. 4 to 2 lights, 4 to 2 travels, 3 centers, 4 set lines of calculations, 5 centers of measure, 5 line centers, line condition setting, converting operation system, and void calculation lines, webbing line operation lights, and light dark line operation signals and location setting, and ground lines of panel. Okay, so that's communication system, all through travels, all direct signals, location system, a Skynet and operation signals that modifies the system, all through signal, all through operation setting, all through travel, converting timeline lock line operation signals into 4 to 2 line rotations, 50 lines of mark, 60 lines measure, 70 line connection setting, 100 lines of flux line channels of operation screen locations. Down by equation. Okay? It's all through the D.O.S of communications. You got to be prepared what's going to happen in your travels. Okay? All right. So let's see. We got 1 signal over flats, directing ground centers in process line, and an engagement 1 line operation 1 signal. The modified system line connection setting, the converting system puts everything in process to fail safe. Now those 7 channel water line screens, the process that indicates the system all comes in track, communicates to its system back in operation. Okay? So it defaults everything to channel from Monday to Sunday and Sunday into position location setting. So the 7 lines of channel waters changes the panel's operation lines of signals that locates the setting, position location to its valve. It vasts the volumes of that velocity that puts channels of operation screen locations that process you into information system all through activation. Okay? So we're going to stop there. okay? Because there's a lot going on in travel, and it's a lot of information you're not processing through because it's just on standby, okay? But when it goes in that position, this is exactly what goes on in your communications. So you're sending through your capsule, and when your DOS is going through indication, all through travel, okay? All right, constellation pathogen lines of 1 signal line condition setting, 1 DOS on standby, 3 centers of travel, classification and upgrading system, and downloading and process line direct centers, directing lines level C, level A, level C, level A, CN5.